So get ourselves and each other through this like rocky period. We started meeting on Zoom once a week at noon on Wednesdays just to do our money admin together and chat about it. And guys, that is as technical as it gets. That's what we did. We have hate to brag, but a WhatsApp chat.
Wow. Sorry, what one of those, Sean? Sorry.
Sorry. You have to ask NASA. It's actually really technically like complicated. But we met up once a week on Zoom, partly to troubleshoot together, and also partly to have a bit of a group where, like, if I had to do something really uncomfortable, like something that's quite a simple task, like I just need to go into the different credit card accounts and loans or whatever and just get the number of like, okay, how much debt do I have? It's weird because that's a task that can actually take maybe 15 to 20 minutes, but it's so exposing and uncomfortable that doing that and then going into a group, it's like if I did it first thing on Wednesday morning and then could chat to the girls about it on Wednesday, it's like, okay, and then you could kind of breathe, have the feelings about it and make a plan.
Hello and welcome to the Mouthy Money podcast. Regular listeners will notice that Ed is not with me today, as we hinted at the last podcast that we shared with you all. He has gone off on his paternity leave with his second son, Felix. So we hope Ed is having a lovely time and that mother and baby are all doing well. But rather than just stop, we have decided instead to call upon some friends and see if we can have some more wide-ranging conversations about finance, about making a plan for our finances, and to maybe learn a bit more about how other people are approaching things. So with that in mind, I have got with me two absolutely fantastic guests. First one is Vix Leyton, somebody I've known for a long time. She is a presenter of the Spendology podcast. She is also a well-renowned UK personal finance expert. So you might have seen her on the BBC, on the TV, all over those kind of things. And is also a consumer expert at Think Money. So hi, Vix. Welcome to the show. Delighted to have you with us.
Hi, that was a nice list of accolades. I was mortified. It was like when someone sings happy birthday to you.
Yeah, that was the shortened version, listeners. There's even more accolades if you want to do a bit of Googling. And Vix has introduced us to the lovely Siân Docksey, who is, and I'm reading through my prepared bio here to correct me if there's anything wrong here, Siân, sorry, a pole dancing comedian and writer and freestyle Capricorn financier. Is that right?
Yeah, I hope I haven't tanked the credibility of the podcast before I've even opened my mouth with that intro.
I don't think there was much credibility to start with. So if anything, you're probably bringing us up a notch or two by making it more interesting than two beardy blokes talking about money all the time. So we decided to get together because Siân has a lot to tell us about sort of her approach to money. But is that right, Vix? I'm going to hand over to you here and let you let us know why we're all gathered here today.
I brought you here today. Siân has become an inadvertent influencer. She's my financial influencer of the week. I spotted a post she'd done on Instagram talking about how she'd formed a money coven and got brilliant results. And I was like, right, I've got to know more about this. So I mentioned her to you and pretty much everyone I've met when I've been talking about personal finance since I saw this post, because I just think it's incredibly important. It's as a woman in PR and finance, I know how big the conversation is about financial confidence for women. There's constant chats happening about how we can make finance more accessible for women, from the sublime to the ridiculous. So we've got the good guys saying, actually, this isn't a skill issue. This is the confidence comes from a lot of factors beyond not being smart enough. That's not why we're not doing it. To the ridiculous, which is like, oh, pink text, girly writing, mums out there, do you want to start? Put 10 pence in a jar. Like, it is, the range of conversation for women is broad. So I thought you taking like radical small action, having huge results is something that we should hear about.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I was honestly really touched that you reached out. Also surprised that this got any engagement, because I genuinely just wanted to do something on social media to acknowledge how useful, essentially, and it's nothing groundbreaking, having a WhatsApp group and a weekly Zoom meeting. That's it. That's all that I'm talking about has been for, just straightening out a really tricky financial period.
Because I think you say it's simple, but we're not doing it. And I guess you're not from the UK. So do you think this is a cultural problem globally? Do you think British people have got a particularly uptight vibe when it comes to money? Why aren't we having these conversations?
Oh my God, that's a really good question. I think Brits are very weird about money. I'm from
Guilty.
Belgium. Well, I guess kind of cagey. So I grew up in Belgium with British parents, but we're all Belgian now. And my sister is marrying a Belgian guy who does work in finance. And he said, like, yeah, Brits' behavior around money is very different. Saving is so much less of a thing here than like Belgians start saving from within the womb, like they're starting a savings account. But I think, and it's kind of relevant to the little project that me and two friends had, I think that there is a lot of shame with talking about money, and I don't actually think that is a Britain specific thing. I think money is very, very emotional. Maybe Brits are more cagey because we have a very entrenched class system. I don't know. But I don't know. I think that insecurity and secrecy about money is, I think that's pretty ubiquitous, maybe more pronounced in the UK. I don't know. Separate podcast, I guess.
I think there is quite a gendered view of money that's entrenched in us as well. Certainly for my mum's generation, she got divorced very late in life. And my dad did all the finances. That was sort of, they made the decision together. But when she was suddenly on her own, she was having to have conversations and think about things she's never thought of before. And it was stressful for me to watch because she immediately, if she didn't understand, was like, I'm stupid. I don't want to talk to anyone. I can't believe I don't know this. I'm 60. So it's...
Yeah, it's so weird. So and again, it's just personality and coincidence. Exactly the opposite. In my house, my mum is the oldest daughter, and also her dad was an accountant in North Wales. And so she has been very shrewd, I think, about money. She manages the family finances, as far as I'm aware. Also, so I have two younger sisters. The thing that my mum has drilled into us from day one is that financial independence is the most important thing. My mum's been in a happy marriage with my dad for 35 years. Like, there's been no need for her to have, like, an estate fund or things that people talk about. But yeah, I think in terms of decision making and autonomy, she said, like, financial independence is key. We have, in our separate ways, found a way to completely jeopardize this by me working in the arts, essentially, and both my sisters work in healthcare. So we didn't go for particularly lucrative, like, business savvy careers. But no, it's weird. In the house that I grew up, mum was the real, like, budget conscious person. And I think it's a personality thing as well as a gender thing.
Yeah. I remember sitting in a meeting about pensions and my mum was answering the risk questions.
Ooh, sexy.
Yeah. But she really wanted to be somebody. Well, she was trying to impress the bank manager, basically. She was saying, like, her approach to risk. She was like, oh, yeah, I'm crazy. I'm reckless. I'm daring. I was like, Mum, you're not. This is not a BuzzFeed quiz. Tell the man the truth.
Mostly bees. Was it that kind of thing? Yeah. You are crazy when it comes to cash. Yeah.
We're on a financial roller coaster, but that's not the definition of daring. Chris, what was it like for your household when you were growing up? Was money something that you talked about? Or... Yeah,
it's interesting. I've mentioned it a couple of times in previous episodes, but I grew up in quite a low income household. So there was a combination of reasons for that. Mostly the economics of the 1980s and a bit of Thatcherism when you're at the wrong end of it was quite painful, to be honest. So we ended up making me quite aware of having security through whatever I do. So I've ended up being a big saver. It's interesting you said that, Sian. My first thing I do whenever I get paid is make sure there's some money going into savings. Simple as that. And then that has been a good thing. I've got a good buffer, decent buffer when there's uncertainty out there. But actually, and it's funny, I was talking about this earlier, but my mother-in-law is staying with us for a bit over Christmas. She comes early, which is great. And she was sort of gently hinting, and rightly so, I think, that maybe you can, like, free up some of the cash, Chris, to do some, like, essential repairs around the house. And my initial reaction was no. I need my massive pile of Scrooge McDuck gold coins in case, something goes wrong. And actually, they probably, Tanya and my mother-in-law, Tanya's my wife, has probably thought, look, let's work on him for 2 weeks. And then by the time January 1st comes around, he might actually just go, actually, I'll relent and start to free up some of the emergency funds. So, yeah, it's quite interesting. And the psychology of it is long-standing and deeply held. And I just feel uncomfortable not having, a buffer, because I've seen if you're blown around by the winds of change and insecurity, and a mat bill drops on the mat and ends up shaking the foundations of the house, that can really kind of lead to all sorts of other knock-on effects, which aren't great. Me, I'm a saver and rather risk averse. But the good thing about the conversations I've been having with Ed and your good selves and other people around this is that long-term investing, I absolutely understand the sort of benefits of that. So I've become a sort of steady Eddie investor over the years, which has definitely had a benefit, and I can see the benefits of that and have learned more and more about that. So, yeah. To answer your question, Vic, sorry, I went off on one there.
I was just wondering if it was mum or dad that sort of managed the household finances in your sort of family experience.
It was a combination of both, actually. So my dad was the main breadwinner, but my mum would apportion out the budget. So my dad would pay the kind of big bills, make sure there was cash available for, things like that. But actually mum would make sure that week to week ends met. So they kind of divvied it up between them, really, and did what they could. So yeah, it was quite.
I'm probably being a bit unfair. It wasn't like, my mum held all the purse strings and sort of gave my dad a £20 note every now and then, like, buy yourself something nice, like they were a team. But I think in terms of an approach to money, I think my mum had a real sense of money as a tool to be able to open up options, and coaching us to like get in a place where the approach is manage your finances or your finances will manage you, like Chris, you were saying, because once things get out of control, things can snowball really quickly, and then you're potentially in a very dangerous position.
Which brings us on quite nicely to why the money coven was formed, actually.
Yeah.
And it resonated a lot with me because last year I lost my job unexpectedly, and up until that point I thought everything was pretty well balanced, but I didn't really have much of a savings. I'd spent a lot of it because I save quite a lot every year, weirdly, but then I throw it all on the bonfire that is Edinburgh Fringe. So I have the capability to save. When I've got a focused goal, I've been able to save a few grand a year, but I was the grasshopper that was out when the ants were making their little store. And then I found out, I was like, oh, actually, if I can't find a job soon, it's going to get scary really, really quickly, looking at the repayments I'd made. Because I prioritise, and I'm the worst finance expert ever, but if I can save one person, it's worth it. Because I prioritised basically money now and having a lifestyle now, but also having cash. I thought if I had cash in my bank account, I was doing well. So occasionally when I wanted little treats or I wanted to extend my budget, I was using credit cards in a way that I thought was quite responsible. But all of a sudden, when I didn't have the means to pay, it started to unravel really quickly. And I'm someone who lives a relatively middle-class life. I felt quite secure. I felt quite safe. I've got a partner who had a job. So we weren't going to be evicted, but the horror of it, and also the horror of not being able to pay my way in the house, that stuck with me. And again, it was shame. I felt ashamed, even though it was not my fault that redundancies were made, but I was mortified that I couldn't pay my way. And it's deeply entrenched in me. Like, my parents are very much, you've got to stand your ground at all costs. So I found that an incredibly difficult thing to manage. It completely changed my approach. And I have now started saving this year for the first time, using one of those save the change roundup features. So it just skims off everything I pay. It rounds it up to the nearest pound. It puts that money away into a little account for me. And I've started to save, and it does feel really, really good. But I'm embarrassed. It's taken me a massive setback and this long, and I really wish I'd done it. If I'd done it 10 years ago, it would be in a very different place. So
yeah, and I think it's important without completely deflecting responsibility for our own actions. We are in such an expensive period in history, reeling off all of the cliches, but it's true, like wages not keeping up with inflation, just like the cost of everything. I think it's important to kind of take away some of the blame for just it's just expensive to do stuff. When I talked to my mum about finances, she remembers buying her first house for £8,000. It's just we're not in the same reality.
We're not the same people.
And yeah, and Vix, what you said about the Edinburgh Fringe, I mean, that's a whole other kettle of worms. But I think when you're creative, but also in a lot of careers, to be honest, you're taking calculated risks with money every now and then. With Edinburgh, I've got to the point where I've just gone, I can't keep buying lottery tickets. This is too much of a drain for I wouldn't say not the rewards, because it is rewarding, and I feel like I would make all those decisions again. If I was given a reset. But I do think that some of the stark reality of suddenly finding yourself in a bit of a financial hole is like it can be a bit outside your control. Why is butter like £4?
Yeah,
Just like this kind of
madness.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They've got
You
it
know?
in little boxes now, little security boxes in my local Tesco. Like it's deemed so precious that now you have to have
Yeah, I know.
the
It's really
safety
like
tag removed. It's
I have a
yeah.
so one of my jobs, my day job is I work in comms for a European company. So it's I feel very privileged. I have like colleagues in the Netherlands, Spain, etc. And they are horrified that in UK supermarkets, bottles of olive oil now have that safety tag
Yeah.
on them because like alcohol, like it's a luxury product, or like salmon fillets are locked off like they're a bottle of gin. I do think that we're working against a very challenging landscape. And, what would be a sort of like middle class lifestyle or just kind of doing normal stuff is
Yeah.
harder. Yeah.
There's this horrible phrase that's been put together, Henry's, high earners not rich yet, to basically cover
hate
the
that.
phenomenon of the amount of money that people are earning now on paper looks amazing. But actually, with tax the way it is, with everything costing the way it does, you're not living a fancy bougie lifestyle. This is not getting you the same stuff it would have got you even 10 years ago. So I think it's hard. You're right. We can't blame ourselves. And that is why we need to have money conversations and be honest in case this helps somebody. But this is where we start our story. So Siân, you'd had a few financial setbacks that had made you reevaluate what you were doing.
So in 2023, I took a show up to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which I was very pleased that I did and I was very proud of. I also got some Arts Council funding for the development of that. So I was really lucky in how it came about. But in that year, similar to you, Vix, it was just a bit of a couple of like dominoes falling down of my retainer client for my pays the bills job. I'm a commercial copywriter and I work in communications. Retainer client had to drop me just because they'd had a challenging financial year. So I was doing Edinburgh and then copywriting. I mean, it's still kind of in flux as a job, but it was taking a big hit because the AI excitement had kind of crept in. And, like I'll work in bars, I'll do like whatever. But just finding work was really challenging. And then at the end of that year, nothing like serious, but I got ill. So just for a combination of reasons that like in isolation are manageable, but when they add up creates like a bit of a problem. I just had a year where instead of like earning money, I was kind of burning through savings, ended up taking on debt. And it was just generally bleak. Also, just speaking of social media, I really felt in that kind of paradox of what you see on social media isn't real. Somebody can be having like the best like fringe festival, doing all these gigs, whatever, and behind the scenes they're just crying into their hands because your cash flow, like the in versus out, is just like backwards and all over the place. But so for a combination of reasons, it was a challenging year. And losing your job unexpectedly is never fun. And I have two really close friends. So one is my best friend from home. We've known each other since we were little embryos. And then another pal who's just a friend from like partying in London, basically, who are also self-employed. We're also having a bit of a just kind of period of transition in their work. So one of them is a freelance illustrator, has a really nice business based on that, and the other one is a graphic designer. So get ourselves and each other through this like rocky period. We started meeting on Zoom once a week at noon on Wednesdays just to do our money admin together and chat about it. And guys, that is as technical as it gets. That's what we did. We have hate to brag, but a WhatsApp chat.
Wow. Sorry, what one of those, Siân? Sorry.
Sorry. You have to ask NASA. It's actually really technically like complicated. But we met up once a week on Zoom, partly to troubleshoot together, and also partly to have a bit of a group where, like, if I had to do something really uncomfortable, like something that's quite a simple task, like I just need to go into the different credit card accounts and loans or whatever and just get the number of like, okay, how much debt do I have? It's weird because that's a task that can actually take maybe 15 to 20 minutes, but it's so exposing and uncomfortable that doing that and then going into a group, it's like if I did it first thing on Wednesday morning and then could chat to the girls about it on Wednesday, it's like, okay. And then you could kind of breathe, have the feelings about it and make a plan. But then also, with the other two who were doing things like needing to change their business model because social media has evolved, or kind of needing to kind of fish into a different set of clients to revise their portfolio. It was a bit of a check-in for separate admin things that we were all doing, but the focus of the group was money because we were all in a space where we needed to improve things financially. Something else worth mentioning is, so the three of us are self-employed. The other two, and this is just the endless like mid-30s girls chat, but motherhood is kind of hopefully on the horizons, looking at the logistics of that, which honestly has been very sobering and quite shocking. Kind of needing to put in a plan of like, how do I take maternity leave? Like, how do I finance this? How do you deal with the costs of childcare? Just needing to kind of get some clarity on that was something that was, just really nice to do as a team. And there wasn't like an agenda for every meeting. We would just like log on Zoom, inevitably have a bit of a gossip, but then just kind of do a round of updates of like, here's some money admin I did this week. And sometimes that money admin was, here's how I cried into my hands and despaired about money this week. Because, like we were talking about earlier, like there can just be a lot of shame and anxiety about money. And some stuff happens through no fault of your own. Sometimes you're looking at a setup and going, how have I messed this up so badly? Like you can really kind of have a lot of self-blame for just like, how did I do this? But what I found was the consistency of it, of just like, right, just once a week, we're just going to bring it to the table and talk about it. Also, it being quite boundaried. Like, if you're only going to talk about money for an hour, you can do it. You can kind of get in the important stuff and then crack on with your week. And also we just kind of built up a lot of trust. It's really exposing to show people what your finances look like. And I don't use any sophisticated financial machinery. I'm a real, I have a spreadsheet. There's one set of columns for in and there's one set of columns for out. And that's how it works.
Tried and
Yeah. Can't knock the classics. But actually being transparent about the figures on that, clarity is, such an asset, I think, when it comes to finances. And it's very cheesy, but I think sunshine is the best disinfectant is so true. Like if you're looking at things in the cold light of day and going, okay, here's the situation, feel all the feelings about the situation, but this is where we are. What do we do next? Means that you can start to have a bit more agency. But the key thing is not doing it alone, because I really think like shame thrives in isolation. And also sometimes you find out it's like, wow, my friends are really great business strategists in ways that I hadn't anticipated. You'll kind of find, just like skills in your friendship group. What I was surprised by, so we've done this for maybe 2 years now, and for me it's been game changing. I mean, what I published on Instagram is that, so over the course of this year, I've paid off all of my high interest debt and really made a dent in the other debt. My income doubled from where it was last year.
Wow.
Which sounds like a wild brag. I won't tell you what my income was in 2024. It's like, we're not talking crazy mega bucks. I think a lot of people are doing this kind of around this time of year when you're looking at like where you were this time last year to this time this year. It's a completely different landscape. And it's because of having a community. It's because of having a team and like a real trusted team as well. Yeah. And what was the other win? Oh yeah, just automated a lot more stuff. Like Chris, what you were saying about automatic savings, just some basic like financial hygiene and just making things like, I don't dabble in this at all. There's some stuff that is just like locked in as like, that's just kind of rolling around without me sticking my oar in. Yeah, it just kind of feels like a lot of money hygiene has happened. It's definitely not perfect. And, there's tons of room for improvement. And also things change, like you're saying, like an unexpected bill comes in where you're like, well, that's my September plan derailed. Or, just like plans change through no fault of your own. But yeah, having the little accountability group really helped. And yeah, I put that post out on Instagram just because it was nice to talk about. And I found it so game changing. And like I said, it's not complicated. We literally had a Zoom meeting once a week. That's what worked. But I think that, a couple of people reached out and said, that they were starting a money coven. And then a few people were like, oh, can I talk to you about money? And I was like, I'm really flattered that you think I have any kind of financial expertise. I actually don't think I'm that useful. I think that and again, it was just a bit of a coincidence, but me and the other two by coincidence, we're a similar age. We're all self-employed, so have a lot of overlap in things that relate to us. And also, we sort of are a bit scattered geographically as well and have similar experiences with that. So through coincidence, we were quite compatible as a group. I think, if you're a primary school teacher and your friend's a hedge fund manager, I don't know if your money troubleshooting group is going to be that useful. It might be a little bit, but it kind of was a bit of a coincidence that we had a lot of compatible experiences and could like troubleshoot with each other because there was a bit of a shared knowledge. I feel like, you said this earlier, there's no one size fits all blueprint for how to handle your finances, and everyone's the expert on actually what works for them at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But we were just kind of lucky in that sense that, we set this up as a kind of group therapy, like more than anything else. But because we were working with each other and had quite similar experiences, it was effective. I think that if people are thinking of doing similar, reach out to people who are similar to you because they will have the most relevant information. Me just kind of chatting about what works for me on LinkedIn is not as useful for someone, So I feel like I've completely monologued. But yeah,
it's like, I think life stage is important, but and having just money chat as part of normal chat, because when I started working at Moneybox, I worked there for 6 months this year. When I started working at Moneybox, I found out for the first time, age 40, about the lifetime ISA. And it's the best thing I've ever heard. I've already bought a flat, so I can't use it for that. But I was gutted that I couldn't use it. So I started telling everybody about it like an evangelist. I was like going out into the street. I was like, guys, have you heard about this free money that's available? And it turns out a lot of my friends had used lifetime ISAs to buy their houses, but we'd never talked about it. And they were and I was like, you've been secretly doing revision and then turning up at exams and going, no, I didn't revise either. And I felt like the only person that said, oh no, I didn't revise. And I actually didn't. That's how I felt.
Well, I think that's another thing of like, so it's very exposing to show people financial shortcomings. It's just as exposing to show people your assets as well, and where actually you might have a bit more than you're letting on, and that's why I think the trust thing comes in, because sometimes like showing people the wins or because
you don't want to brag either.
No, and I think that's the thing is like money sensitive, and like if you've had a good year, you don't want to rub it in someone's face if they're really struggling. Like that's just mean. And also I think it is, people are starting with very different understandings of how to hustle. Like what you're saying, Vix, the shortcuts. The shortcut that came out this year was, the national insurance filling in the gaps, like pension repayment things. Yeah. Like I was like, oh, that's something that everyone should know about. People only found out if like a mate suggested it to them,
Because you don't want to reveal you were the last to know either. So I think a lot of the reason that it wasn't talked about is people felt like everyone knows this, but it's always worth having that chat. But I guess you said you're a pen and paper kind of spreadsheets person. Like myself and Chris work in an industry where we pride ourselves on offering sort of quality advice and guidance. Did you find any of that helpful? Did you look to that before you set up the coven? Was there anything out there that you genuinely think, actually, that's changed my mindset?
It's a good question. I mean, I'm a real Luddite, but also I would not class myself as someone who's super like strategic about money. Like, don't come to me for advice on investing or
who knows what the money coven will do next year.
For sure. Like, yeah. And I mean, and also it was set up not as like an emergency stopgap, etc., but we set that up from need. I see lots of adverts for, like female invest whatever, which is like, cool, okay, you've got a little bit more cash to play with. Amazing news, 10 out of 10. How could you grow that? That's not really the position that we were in. Yeah, I mean, like for me, it really pulled me out of a hole. And I think, with the others, with imminent motherhood, they were like, can't wait to jump into that hole. So yeah, are there any specific things? No, things that I have found just helpful off the top of my head are high yield savings accounts, just like automated savings and pensions. And I'm doing like Ladybird book of key stage 3 finance. I'm not saying anything particularly impressive. Yeah, what were other things that came up? Honestly, off the top of my head, it's those. I mean, and also just kind of, like we've had these conversations about like how you're choosing to gamble a little bit with like artistic ambitions. I was just looking at, the model for comics, which has been going since the 80s and 90s, of going up to the Fringe every year and to being like, absolutely can't, So to be honest, it was less about becoming real savvy with financial technology and more just like aligning what the insides of my bank account looked like with the real world, and what's actually feasible. And I think, a kind of shared vibe about money between my friends is like, money is the tool to live with more joy, and also like it's a tool to grow things that you want in your life. And Chris, you mentioning the kind of like stacks of cash in the background, lovely, that's the dream. And like what has been helpful is, so I feel very secure if I've just like vaulted off, kind of like, hey, so this is just like growing on its own terms, this is the emergency fund, like I need that as well. But like I think that money ultimately serves what you want from your life. And I think that, a lot of the conversations in this group were getting really real about what do we want and what will it cost? And then how do we strategically approach that? And it's very challenging, like, because when you're looking at moving house or having a kid or just paying like it's like, wow, actually looking at the figures can be very emotional. But then you have the feelings together and you go, right, so what's the strategy? What's the realistic timeline? What needs to go? What needs to stay? And something that I like about a money expert that I've mentioned before, Tori Dunlap, is she's a bit like, don't forego things like your latte that you really enjoy or like a nice meal every now and then for a real Spartan approach to money. Like the point of money is to live well, not like live extravagantly necessarily, but it is a tool for your life. So it's about getting more strategic, but building it around like, right, what do I want from my life? And how is the money a tool to serve that?
Could you see yourself becoming an investor at any point? So obviously we've dealt with all the fires now. Well, you're looking a bit longer term.
Sean, you mentioned you got a pension though, right? So you're already an investor, aren't you? Are you?
I mean, this is the thing is like, I'm really not unsensible about money. And also I've been self-employed for a long time now. So like this is the thing is actually for a long time, my finances have been ticking over. Okay. I wouldn't brag about them. I wouldn't say there's any big wins, but in terms of just my life, like stuff has been okay. And also like as a freelancer, you have to put some basics in place about money that I sort of forget how when you are self-employed, there are just a couple of things that you've ticked off the list that are obvious. Like, I've been investing in my own pension for I don't even know how many years and kind of like automated that stuff is in place. I think it's more like Vix, what you said about losing a job when there's just a bit of a like train crash of a couple of hits at the same time and when you don't have something really resilient in place, like a retainer client, that means you're like, okay, my main overheads are covered every month, I can breathe, and then there's more flexible space around the sides. Or just like illness means that you can't work for a couple of months. That's really shit. Can I see myself becoming an investor? This is really gonna be like Instagram white girly, but my kind of guiding little saying for money at the moment is, a hut built on concrete is better than a mansion built on sand. I am so uninterested in anything that's not founded on real, like transparency and reliability. And, we talked a bit about long-term investment. I think if I'm starting investing, I just want to pick a thing and it happens every month and I don't think about it. And my ideal is to just like open that box in 20 years and be like, well, great. Like I don't want to be doing any like shenanigans.
I think because you advocate for obviously talking about money, but you have been fairly self-deprecating throughout this conversation. You're like, I'm no expert, but everything that you've indicated suggests you have built brilliantly solid foundations.
I've had a lot of help.
But I think you need to think about investing. I'm not a financial advisor, but I nearly didn't apply for the job at Moneybox. I didn't think I knew enough about investing, and I thought it was scary, and I thought it was hard, and I thought you had men sitting in a room going, buy, sell, because I only knew investing from TV.
Yeah.
Whereas actually investing is incredibly slow and incredibly boring.
Yeah.
And I know
when done well.
It's not about big risks, taking big swings and big losses. It can be just £5 goes away into another account with someone does the hard work for you. So I wouldn't rule it out.
The area where, I wouldn't say money expert, but I guess a bit of a money financial equity in arts careers, it's the absolute thorn in my side that we don't talk about, money, in creative industries, because to put it bluntly, so I mean, actually I can just give you the stats. So before COVID, there was a podcast called the 18% podcast, which was by working class people who worked in the arts. And it was called the 18% podcast because only 18% of people who worked in the arts at that point were working class. Now it's 7 or 8%.
Yeah.
I'm from like a middle class privileged background. I went to Oxbridge, so I'm one of the people it's like there should be less of me in the arts. You know, we already take up too much space. But it's maddening to me that there's no transparency in these careers about money. And, you know, not to keep wanging on Edinburgh, but that thing of kind of constantly making people just buy lottery tickets and get really exploited and extracted from. I have just seen behavior around money in the arts damage people's health long term, really just kind of take advantage of people who don't come from money and who are like doing everything right. But it sounds like quite extreme language, but honestly, you're just really preyed upon. Yeah. So I think that my sort of little bit of activism or just being annoying is, you know, demanding that people show the fees for projects like up front and go, right, what's this paying? Okay, that's not enough, you know? Just reinventing the wheel here, right? Because what that is, you know, unions. Like that's just, you know, like that's good practice. But
it's like being in a silent auction with things as well, with creative roles everywhere, even outside of comedy. You want it really badly, and you know there's a lot of competition for it. So when you're even asking for a fee, or when you're told, oh, how much do you want? You're doing the back end calculations of going, okay, how do I make this competitive but still afford to live and make sure that my train fare is covered within this? And if anything goes wrong, will I be able to get a taxi?
And sometimes there's the thing of like, you know, you're doing a bit of a calculation of, am I writing myself off by even raising this? I'm past that now because I think at the ripe old age of 35, I'm not going to be kind of like, oh, can I do your gig for £9? And also, so my friend Alice Fraser, who's a brilliant Australian comic, she's talked very transparently and very, I think, impactfully about how the way this is set up means that as soon as you're a mum, goodbye, you know, like we had an article together in the Telegraph of all places, which is okay, but about why the club comedy scene has got such a gender imbalance. And honestly, it's because mums can't live off the money that you're making. And you know, it's like when you have costs of like childcare dependence, which men have too, but it's different. Like I think whole other conversation there. But yeah, I'd say like what I variable impact or effect try and do is just try and shift the needle a little bit in arts so that like, yeah, you're not considered difficult for being really frank about money. I don't have that many projects as a result of this, but I'm just not in projects where I can't pay collaborators like a non-insulting amount of money because I just refuse to work that way. And again, like I said, I'm reinventing the wheel here. This is what unions do. But like, yeah, I think that has been a real wake-up call for me. You know, the comedy industry is asleep at the wheel on this because we're all still pretending like it's 2002. So it's just not compatible that way. But
yeah, we're in a situation where comedians can't afford to perform and people can't afford to come and see them. So it's bleak. And also, you know, very established comics are told by their agents like, oh, you're going to do the festival, and they're like, on whose dime? And their agents will be like, thought about taking out another credit card, you know, like it's a very exploitative system. And so I don't know, that's honestly a little bit where I am with being a bit more savvy about money. It's just being very, very transparent about like, right, what's making me money, what's costing me money, what are calculated risks that I'm prepared to take. The other thing is, and it's kind of going back to the conversation a bit about motherhood, I do think, and it's kind of what we were saying, like money is emotional. When people have a burning desire to do something, more often than not, they'll make actually stuff that you want, you will find a way of making it work. I think that we could adjust things so people didn't have to do that. But I think, money stuff will only block the desire to do things to a certain extent. Like people just find a way of managing. I don't think people should have to manage. I think we should support everybody to thrive. And that's kind of like, in a way, it's real financial self-harm for a self-employed single woman to have a kid, but
if someone wants to have a kid, they're going to do it.
You don't always make the rational choice, but sometimes that's not the right one.
But I also don't think that the rational choice is how money works. I don't think people necessarily sit and go like, right, what is the budget? I think people are like, I want to go on that date. I want to do that project. I want to go on that trip, and sort of kind of sometimes maybe hope and pray that the finances will fall into place. But you can only do that once or twice before. Yeah, and Vix, I feel like we've had a bit of a similar experience of when it goes wrong once, it's so, I know traumatizing feels too extreme, but you're just paralyzed, like it's so paralytic that you don't take on that risk again. Yeah. And I do feel like, for me, the outcome of having had a real knock has been I'm way more financially knowledgeable than I was a few years ago. And, maybe if I hadn't tried to be a creative after, like, how many economic recessions have we had now? Like, I've lost count, in a cost of living crisis, maybe I wouldn't have this kind of financial, just kind of like, it's like angst or sensibility, but that's where we are. And yeah, but I feel like I'm rambling. The thing that was helpful about forming a little strategic committee about it was not doing it in isolation.
Mm.
And yeah, just not like suffering in silence as well, all of the cliches, but yeah, not trying to solve it all by myself is what really made it work.
Well, I think that has basically realigned a lot of things that I've been thinking about towards the end of the year. It's work in progress, I guess.
What's your number one tip, Vix, for shambling creatives? Just trying to have a good time out here.
Knowing your worth. And fighting for it, I think, is across the board, has always been my vibe, whether that is claiming delay repay because they've wasted my time and my time's my most valuable commodity, even if it's for £1.32, or asking for pay rises, asking for salary updates, asking for more days of leave. Like, ask the question. Yeah. I think we are, particularly women, we want to be liked. We want to be taken seriously. We want to be liked. We don't want to make a fuss. And as a result, we don't ask direct questions that could lead to very quick, very good outcomes.
Yeah, no, I really like that. And I guess, the negative side is sometimes you will know your worth and look at something you want to do and be like, this won't pay me possibly. And so you don't do it. And that can be really heartbreaking. But also, and what has really helped with me and the nanny coven is kind of like, when someone needed to have a hard conversation about hiking up the rates, being like, we'll talk about it on Wednesday, but if you need to have just like someone on the other end of the line before or after, just as a kind of pep talk, just say. Also, like, I was literally texting them this morning because I've got a new retainer client, which I'm very happy about, like, But whenever there's a decision, it's kind of like just pinging the group and going, am I being shafted here? Should I have tried to ask for more? And kind of just getting basically having a bit of a freestyle board of directors, like that can be really helpful. Yeah. And I also just think, like, not separating money from life. Money is the tool to do things with your life that are important. So I think those being meshed together. Yeah. And no one in this group is there to kind of try and like outswerve another nerd by being like, actually, I did this and it made me do it. It's kind of like, cool. Like, cool, but that's not what this is about.
I always give that advice when I'm asked about sort of money strategies. It's like, do not plan for yourself on your best day.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
Challenges, when you're doing reverse budgeting, it is a road to failure because life doesn't work like that. You on your best, most ambitious day, a week later when something's gone wrong and you don't want to cook, that can't be a reason to stop all good. Yeah. So be you on your sort of your sloppiest day. When you're
I love that. And that's a little bit, I guess it's a little bit what I'm trying to embody with the hut built on concrete is better than a mansion built on sand, because I've seen those mansions collapse and it's bad.
But I feel like 2026 is looking fiscally good based on what we've talked about.
Bloody hope. Creative stuff, arts, performance, whatever, it creates a lot of positive economic activity. I'm not going to be the one who goes like banging on Downing Street's door being like, hey, if you invested a bit more in shows, then people would spend money at the bar. People would like go to local businesses. People would do their little shop like before. But like, it is true. If you're taking the most like cold-blooded business approach, like creative stuff is good for everyone. And also, I'm obviously kind of just like defending my own agenda here, but I wouldn't have stuck with it if I didn't believe it can work and if I hadn't seen people make it work. Like, I don't really mentor people because I don't feel like I am in a position to like be able to credibly say kind of like, hey, no, do this, it's worked for me really well. But like, like I earn a decent living from a combination of my creative weirdness, blah, 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 substantiated by other day jobs and freelance stuff and bits and pieces. And it works and it makes me happy. So the idea is to kind of keep nourishing that and growing that. And, like in the little group that I'm talking about, one friend has a substantial business based on her like webcomic cartoons, and then my other friend is really thriving as a graphic designer in corporate stuff. Like, it really is possible. It just takes, as you say, like knowing your worth and not backing down, and just not like accepting less than your worth and being willing to piss people off a little bit. But also just kind of like believing it can work, not in a delusional way, in a substantiated, boring spreadsheets way.
One that passes the WhatsApp group smell test. Is that, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
One that gets like thumbs up, not like a hurried voice note, like, babe.
So if people have loved this and they want to hear more about Siân Docksey, where can we find you? What's your next project that we can be part of?
Well, Instagram is my main social media platform. I have a podcast called Pole the Other One, where I interview pole dancers about usually the resilience skills they've learned from pole dancing, but just generally what the art of hanging off a stick can teach us about how to enjoy life more. I have a Patreon where I publish bits of writing and a Substack. It's on my Instagram, and I am not currently planning any live dates for 2026, but watch this space. Wow, the knowing skepticism, Vix. Find me on Instagram. That's where I spaff off about whatever I'm up to. That's where I am.
We'll make sure there's some links in the show notes.
Thank you.
For sure. But that's all the questions from me. Chris, how do we take this home?
Well, thank you both for coming on and sharing your experiences of what it's like being creative and, having day jobs to support, and how your sort of money coping skills in 2025 and beyond. Ed usually ends it like this, which is, please do subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you've got any comments on what you've heard, we'd love to hear them, particularly about your kind of money coping strategies. Who do you speak to? How do you speak to them? What kind of things have you done yourself which you found have helped? Siân, your WhatsApp group is so simple but effective, and I'm sure other people have other examples of things there. So it just remains to say thank you, Vix, for ably being a fantastic guest presenter today. Thank you, Siân, for sharing your experience, and we'll hopefully hear from you all again soon. And with that, I will say thank you and goodbye.
Thank you so much for having me.